I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries too. But when they come from hell and they complain and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it.
So we got some pretty major updates to bring you on this whole Minnesota Somali fraud story we've been covering quite a bit, because apparently it is now the case, according to local sources on the ground, including the liberal politicians, that ICE agents have been spotted in the Minneapolis-St. Paul Twin Cities area there to carry out President Trump's order to revoke TPS and deport those who were here on an essentially temporary refugee migrant status that was clearly being abused by many, especially under the prior administration. Now, as usual, I gotta say that the reaction from local Democrat politicians is interesting, but not all that surprising, in the sense that on one hand, they keep on telling us, I mean, how many times has Tim Walz tried to insist that the problems we are describing are extremely minuscule and not that widespread, right? Sure, there's a couple criminals who are committing fraud, but don't worry, because that's not the norm, and you can't demonize the entire community based on the actions of a few. And it's like, wait a minute, we actually were not doing that. And then they turn around and tell us that, oh, well, only a couple hundred people are on TPS. Okay, so if it's a very small issue that we're responding to here, then what's the big deal? What's with the outsized hysterical reaction? Well, I think it is clearly the case, as we've all established, that whether it's immigration fraud or the financial fraud, this type of behavior amongst the Somali diaspora living in this country is a lot more widespread than just a few, or as Democrats typically describe it to be.
You told me to look into Minnesota and their fraud on visas and their programs. 50% of them are fraudulent, which means that wacko Governor Walz either is an idiot or he did it on purpose. And I think he's both, sir. He brought people in there illegally that never should have been in this country, said they were somebody that they're not. They said they were married to somebody who was their brother or somebody else. Fraudulent visa applications, signed up for government programs, took hundreds of billions of dollars from the taxpayers, and we're going to remove them and we're going to get our money back.
Now, folks, if you enjoy our content, do us a favor. Make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. But, oh yes, right? They tell us it's a relatively small issue. Please don't demonize everybody. And then it turns out it's not like 5 people. It's actually 50% of the entire population who's engaging in some form of immigration fraud. It's not a couple of bad guys decided to steal money. It's billions of dollars stolen in several different disconnected from one another schemes where it's basically just a cultural norm to grift and fraud off the government, right? Which really shouldn't surprise you if they're coming from a country where piracy is basically a cultural norm, right? It's almost like the same stuff is going on. And if you still didn't believe me, right, and the reaction here from local leaders is not so obvious, let us remind ourselves it was only about a week and a half ago that you had the Minneapolis police chief actually apologizing to the Somali community for cracking down on fraud. And basically saying, I'm sorry, whatever harm I caused. And I think to myself, right, wait a minute. How could that be the case? Why would that be a bad thing if it's just a few people? And by the way, shouldn't that be helping the rest of the community? Because if wide swaths of the community are not also in on it, then surely they don't want to deal with criminals either, right? But clearly that's not the case. It's pretty obvious who's running the show here. Take a listen.
Community hadda caruurteena inaan garab istaagno chiefkana waa u baahannahay annagana waa isku baahannahay
ashano kamida odayaasha community-ga Soomaaliyeed iyo waalidiinta magaaladan degan ilmana ku koriyay.
The Somali community here in Minneapolis has been welcoming and has shown love towards me, and I appreciate it. Over the last 3 years, we have been working together to try and address some of the real serious problems that we have in our community. We have to be honest at times with the problems that we're having in our community, and we need our community to help us fix those problems together because it's real and it's serious. At the same time, if people have taken anything that I have said out of context in a way that's caused harm, I apologize and I'm sorry for that because that's not my intention at all.
He's sorry, he says. He's sorry that he has to apologize to the entire Somali community as a whole for the actions that are supposedly only being committed by a rogue few. Yeah, again, I say it's almost like these problems are much more widespread than we've been led on to believe. And by the way, that's exactly the story we covered this week with Tim Walz when it came to the DHS system and how he basically has this system set up in place to turn a blind eye to fraud. He barred the ability for whistleblowers or independent auditors to even come in and check the state budget that's going to this type of stuff anymore. This story repeats itself over and over again because, after all, let's say it again, repeat after me, the Democrat Party is a criminal organization based widely on this type of fraud, driving their voting base, driving their political machine, whether it's financial, whether it's immigration, whatever it is. And clearly you can tell by their reaction to us supposedly only getting rid of a couple hundred people, right? It's not that big of a problem. Oh, the fraudsters, that's only a handful, right? It's definitely not several hundred. That clearly, there's a lot more to this story than we would think. And yeah, that said, apparently the announcement here now is coming from Omar Fateh, the formerly failed candidate of the mayor of Minneapolis, who just said today that ICE has now been seen all over Minneapolis, abducting our neighbors from the streets and their homes as part of their operation. Please share this thread with your friends and neighbors to make sure they have the access to resources necessary to protect one another. So there you have it.
Secretary Noem just talked about, just elevated their priority status. So yes, there's going to be an increase of activity up there, and we're going to hold people accountable. We're going to enforce the law without apology. So again, I've told every sanctuary city mayor, governor, you can stand aside and let us make your community safe and remove criminals and even legal aliens that commit crimes that make themselves, if they're a resident alien, they commit a certain offense, a felony offense, even they're deportable and they'll be deported. We're going to enforce the laws of this country without apology, including in the Twin Cities.
When do you expect ICE to make its presence really known in the Twin Cities, Tom? Approximately.
I can't forecast that. I don't want to give up operations, but I can tell you that, Secretary Noem's all over it. I know ICE and CBP and other federal agencies, the FBI, DEA, ATF. President Trump's been a genius on this. He brings all the government to these operations. So if we arrest an alien with drugs, you got the DEA right there, can prosecute the case before we deport him. If you get him with a gun, you got ATF right there to prosecute the case before we deport him. But I can tell you, focus is there. It's coming. But I don't want to give a lot. I can't tell you how many people are on the ground now, how many people are going to be on the ground. I'll leave that to the Secretary of Homeland Security. But focus is on those Twin Cities more because of the criminal activities been uncovered by DOJ and DHS.
Now, I will say, I think it's a genuine concern of all of ours that this is a situation that could rapidly get out of hand. Right? The Battle of Mogadishu. Now, according to Democrats, everything, of course, should be fine because what they're telling us is that the links to widespread fraud and crime and terrorism and piracy, I should say, within these neighborhoods is relatively sparse. But obviously, we know that might not be the case in the Battle of Mogadishu. But anyways, that said, here was Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, first of all saying he would not be cooperating with ICE. And then you can't make this up, right? In his grand big speech, trying to lead the resistance, announce the insurrection, just starts busting out and speaking in Somali. Take a listen.
That's not American. That's not what we are about. And we're going to do right by every single person in our cities. And so to our Somali community, Daman Shabka, Somalied Kunul, Minnesota Garahan, Minneapolis, Waan Kuji Janilahai, Waan Ku Gereb Taganahan.
Yeah, nobody knows what that even means, but look, let's be honest with ourselves. I think we're all rooting for this to go down without a hitch, smoothly, peacefully. The ICE agents are able to carry out their rightful duties, and then they can leave. But there is a possibility, given what we're dealing with here, given, by the way, the politicians, but also the community members that could potentially be involved here, that this could rapidly get out of hand. And it should be a legitimate concern, right? It's not exactly anything new. We've already seen the situation in Portland, in Chicago, in Los Angeles. Minneapolis, mark my words, could very soon become the next insurrectionist-style city. And, if the Democrats are correct, by the way, that, there's no widespread problems with crime, violence, terrorism, whatever, going on in their community, in their neighborhood, then, there should be nothing to fear. But I, of course, have a sneaking suspicion that, well, let me just say, the reactions of these local neighborhoods as ICE shows up may not be so welcoming, okay? Not rooting for it. God forbid. But definitely, even as you take a listen here to what the Minneapolis mayor is saying about the way the city will not work with federal ICE or Border Patrol, our officers will not cooperate, that this situation, unfortunately, all joking aside, genuinely does have a potential to become a battle of Mogadishu, because after all, the problem we're describing, the problem we're responding to is not fake, it's not a myth, and who knows, we might unfortunately be proven right about that. Take a listen.
I was talking to Mayor Carter about this just recently, and here's the thing. Our police officers are not ICE agents. They will not cooperate with ICE agents. But the presence of ICE agents doesn't suddenly make our police officers not police officers. That's what Mayor Carter said to me the other day, and he's exactly right. Our police officers have an obligation, first of all, not to enforce federal immigration law. That is not their job. I want our police officers keeping people safe. I want our police officers responding to violent crime. I want our police officers preventing homicides and carjackings and shootings from occurring in the first place. You know what I don't want them doing? I don't want our police officers spending a single second hunting the father down that just dropped his kids off at daycare, who's about to go and work a 12-hour shift, who happens to be from Mogadishu or who happens to be from Ecuador. That man makes our city a better place. That man is a valued resident of our city and someone who we're proud to have him call Minneapolis and or St. Paul home.
Oh, really? Yeah, is that the case? I'm not sure about that. But you heard a pretty intentionally vague statement there. It is one thing to say that your police department will not directly assist ICE in their raids, but I don't think ICE has ever wanted or needed the help there. The real question in all of these cities is that if civil unrest breaks out, if there are protesters that are getting violent, if they're rioting, if they're throwing things, if even someone's trying to potentially shoot at or assassinate ICE agents, will police officers actively show up and respond? Because we've seen situations, especially in Portland, where there's a literal riot going on and the police just stand back and watch. And by the way, I don't think it's a conspiracy to suggest that could happen in Minneapolis, given the fact that this is exactly what the Minneapolis police did in 2020, right? And then they didn't deploy the National Guard. And the same story here, right? It's like ICE is having violence committed at them. The police won't do anything, but then the governors stand in and say, oh, you're the bad guys. We're not going to allow Trump to deploy the National Guard. I don't know. It's a legitimate concern. That's why I'm saying keep an eye on this, because this might end up being the next insurrectionist city that we have to look at. And I think that was further verified when the Minneapolis police chief, the Mr. I'm so sorry for enforcing the law guy, Brian O'Hara here, says that Somalians should call 911 if ICE shows up wearing masks to make arrests. He says its police will, quote, immediately respond and, quote, intervene. It does sound like he's implying here that his police will indeed interfere directly with immigration enforcement, which, of course, is a crime. And if it is a state-sponsored activity, could totally be classified as, say, insurrection or sedition. So this will, again, be a story to really have to keep an eye on, because are the police actually enforcing the laws of the United States, or is their only purpose here to protect the Somalis who genuinely believe that they are in the nation of Somalia still? I don't know. Take a listen.
Folks that are masked, that they're not sure if they're law enforcement, that they may be kidnapping people. Like, we have had those reports. I want to be clear to the community. The community should know that if you see something like that, that is legitimate, that you don't know if someone is law enforcement, you should call 911. And you should provide as much information as possible, because let's not forget, we very recently had tragedy in this state by someone who was purporting to be law enforcement. So please, let's be clear. That's something everyone should report, and that we will immediately respond to, and we will document, whether it's somebody's not sure if there's a kidnapping happening, somebody's not sure if that there's law enforcement present or not. And that's something else, that's additional policy requirements that we are implementing, that we will document and report these types of things anytime that we hear it, and reminding our officers of their duty to intervene. So if there is anything that is a violation of someone's human rights or civil rights, excessive force or anything like that, they absolutely have a duty to intervene as police officers.
A duty to intervene if civil or human rights are being violated would, of course, the Democrats refer to everything that ICE agents carry out to be a violation of civil or human rights. Again, I say, what possibly could go wrong here? Genuinely, I'm praying for the safety of everyone involved. Okay, I want this to be a clean operation, especially for our ICE agents, but also for the Minneapolis police officers, also for the Somali migrants, because I want this to be peaceful. Nobody has to get hurt here. But clearly, I'm kind of calling it ahead of time. It does appear to be another situation where Democrats are stoking the flames. They're kind of lighting the fire under this type of stuff. And it's certainly concerning to watch. And again, why exactly is this the case? Because, this problem that is being referred to, fraud, etc., out of Minnesota is not only very widespread, but it is a huge profit incentive for the Democrat Party. That much is becoming pretty clear when you look at, for instance, the corruption in the state legislature. And this is something, too, that President Trump pointed out today when it comes to the wider issue, of course, with the Somali migration into the United States. Take a listen.
Walz is a grossly incompetent man. There's something wrong with him, okay? There's something wrong with him. And when you look at what he's done with Somalia, which is barely a country, they have no anything. They just run around killing each other. There's no structure. And when I see somebody like Ilhan Omar, who I don't know at all, but I always watch her for years. I've watched her complain about our Constitution, how she's being treated badly. Our Constitution, the United States of America, is a bad place. Hates everybody, hates Jewish people, hates everybody. And I think she's an incompetent person. She's a real terrible person. But when I watch what is happening in Minnesota, the land of 1,000 lakes, or however many lakes they have, they got a lot of lakes, but this beautiful place, and I see these people ripping it off, and now I'm understanding, and you're going to look at I hear they ripped off Somalians, ripped off that state for billions of dollars, billions, every year, billions of dollars, and they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. Our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. They came from paradise, and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from hell, and they complain, and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Thank you very much, everybody.
I mean, look, Trump's just not playing anymore. I don't know how else to put it, He knows that's going to elicit some pretty ridiculous reactions out of the press. He just doesn't care. Why is that? Because we have a president who's trying to actually protect our country, not just do whatever's seen as the path of least resistance or politically correct. And to the detractors, I ask one simple question. What did Trump say in that statement that was actually untrue or inaccurate? Not what was offensive or you can't say that, but what was wrong, right? Is it false that there's a massive fraud problem that has had billions of dollars stolen? Absolutely not. Is it false, by the way, that Somalia is a completely dysfunctional and just, torn apart country, okay? One of the worst places to be on earth. And when it comes to the diaspora and immigration, even in America, there's not too much evidence that that type of dysfunction has not followed people to the United States of America, and is now the situation in Minneapolis given recent events. Is that untrue? Is that inaccurate? Or are you simply going to respond by saying, oh, that's racist, you can't say that? I mean, I think we know the actual answer here, but nonetheless, okay, I think a lot of people in this country maybe are not necessarily thinking about Somalia or even Minneapolis, Minnesota on a regular basis, but I'm just going to encourage everyone, right? Keep an eye on what happens next now that ICE is showing up to deport what is frankly a very small number of people. Keep an eye on these federal indictments, and I think you'll rapidly see here who was right about this, who was trying to tell you the truth about the problem we have in Minnesota and the rest of the country, and of course, who was trying to sell you lies because their entire political machine, let's just say, is based on buying votes by ignoring and allowing and encouraging the fraud. But that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.